Interesting to see that you're in the science fiction movie at last. You see, you're actually in it. And you're watching the players come out openly and tell you how it's going to be. Not asking you how you like it. No, they're telling you how it's going to be, whether you like it or not. And there's many, many different techniques. Professional persuaders come out from different universities who've been taught behaviorism and psychology and public relations, and who even are taught all the techniques of marketing ideas to you. And you have no idea. Years ago I talked about the language has always been used by those who understand the techniques of controlling your thoughts. And your thoughts that take through your brain all day are given to you by whatever media is present at the time. They often used through the churches at one time, unfortunately. Town criers were used to impart information or decrees from the king. And people would prattle on about these decrees and try to discuss them and find out what they really meant and dissect them and find out what their opinion should be on it. It's much, much easier in those days to just give out. You didn't have TVs or radios, you see, or internet or anything like that. And so once the radio came along, these sciences really took off, using radio as a means of persuasion through propaganda. People don't realize how far ahead it was even in the 1920s and 30s, building up to World War II as an example, and how incredibly accurate it is today to do with the uniformity of information. If you must control societies and worlds, you might say, or nations, then you must control all information, you see. But never give the impression that you control it. You simply make sure that 1,000 different points of light, as they often refer to their agendas and their NGOs and think tanks and so on, that work towards the same goals and put out the same information, but it appears to the public, oh my goodness, they can't all be the same because there's 1,000 newspapers across the world and magazines can't all be connected. Well, they are all connected. It's quite easy to have them all connected, especially since they're all taking information from one or two news sources. That's why they all have the same propaganda. And back in the 30s, I did the talks years ago to do with the 1930s and the 40s, where the Rockefeller Foundation actually put out surveys, did intensive surveys, and they did very accurate ones, just as the same today, you know. If you want to do something, find all the information about it, then use that information to manipulate your ideas into reality. Make it all happen. That's why they've never been afraid to push agendas forward. They really study their victims carefully before they do it. They understand human nature, hence the incredible investigations of psychology, human behavior, and so on by the different sciences that are involved in it. And back in the 30s, Rockefeller and his group realized they only needed about 30 or 33, again naturally 33, right, newspapers and magazines to control all the rest. The rest of them would just copy from the 33, you see. And that's what we have today. But you also have maybe two real wire sources that have been popular for a long, long time. And most media, again, takes their cue from that. You even have all these comedies for many years where they would show you the same clips of a myriad of newscasters giving out the same exact spiels per night as each other without any variation at all. All getting it from the same sources. But to the average person, you understand most folk don't think about things much at all. They tune into their usual favourite newscaster at night on television, and it doesn't dawn on them that every other one, if they flick through the channel, just give an exact same news, all from the same source, obviously. And it is surprising. You would think most folk are like yourselves. For those who are awake, it's a shock at times when you're growing up to realise that most folk don't think or perceive things the way that you do. And it's a shock. I mean, a real shock. When you realise that they've never thought about certain things at all. They've taken so much for granted and they're perfectly conditioned because of it. They haven't questioned much at all. And that's a natural way to be, actually. A really natural way to be in some sense. If you're a truly real world where you lived in a tribe of people in a village and the head villager that you elected had no more than you did in a simple tribal setting. But we're not in that setting anymore, and you have this incredible amount of persuaders at the top and the politicians, the lackeys working for the big ones above them that put them in power. The voters don't put them in power. I don't know where you get that idea from. It's been that way for an awful long time. Politicians are very carefully selected and screened before you even hear their names by the same source. And Carroll Quigley talked about that too. In the 1960s, his main book came out, Tragedy and Hope, and he talked about was the fact that he and a squad of professors were brought in as professional persuaders to debate people who were causing ruffles in society by exposing things which governments and governmental agencies, or even the CIA, were really involved in, you know? And what they would do would bring in about 3 or 4 professors, give them a couple of days to swat up the topic, and they'd go in there in agreed fashion to attack the person who's either putting a book out or putting out information that's exposing things that they didn't want to be known to the general public. So they would try and ridicule the person as you're a person who knows very little, really, and little knowledge is dangerous. We professors know what we're talking about. And you'd defame them and smear them on television, and that would generally, as Quigley said, that would generally work. He talked about this in some videos, by the way, too, old ones years ago. And he said where one guy had come out with a book, the one Gary Allen, called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And he said this guy knew his stuff. He had done his real homework, and he says we couldn't ridicule him. Now, you notice he didn't say we couldn't show that he was wrong. Their whole technique was to ridicule, and that hasn't changed in the present day. This is how it's really always been. It's actually worse today because they've churned out much, much better characters, better trained in behaviorism and psychology and special areas of psychology. Working for the military, by the way, the military's heavily involved in all of this. That's why they turned them loose, using the PSYOP organizations with cyber warfare organizations. And it's been in the media, it's not my word for it. My opinion on it, I've read the articles from the mainstream on it, where they turned these characters loose on those in the internet media to attack them and defame them and do all kinds of dirty tricks, which they'd used across the world, across the Middle East and Syria and Egypt and different places over the past, and Iraq and so on. And it said in the newspaper, the same organizations are now being authorized to be turned loose upon the public inside their own countries. Do you realize what's going on here? And you idiots, and I have to say idiots, go out and vote all the time to keep the same system going. This is incredible, because you have no rights, you see. You really don't have any rights at all. When your governments can collude together to change a society on behalf of bigger organizations above the governments, rather obviously so, in fact, then it truly is amazing. You have so much evidence for it that you're going to go and vote for the same characters to come in again. No. The same people who do what they're told and take all your rights away from you under the guise of COVID, into a formula from previous tabletop exercises that they had with Johns Hopkins in the past, following the exact formula of lockdown, as I say, right back to the one in 2010, Operation Lockstep. That's from the one part of a whole series of stuff put out under the Rockefeller Foundation in 2010. And in Lockstep, they said they'll keep pushing and pushing and demanding, and says that's what we'll do. See, the idea is to change society forever, eh? A planned society. They know where they're going with all, and how to get it there, and how to cause as much damage as possible to the present cultural system. And they said they wouldn't stop until there was mass pushback from the general public. That's what they said back then. And that's what would have to come to stop this now. But even then, you can't just stop it. You've got to start taking back your rights then. If you don't do that, they've won already, you see. They've already got so far ahead with the changes, you'll accept them. So you got to push back for all the rights that you had, including the right to work and have your own business and all the rest of it. Got to do it. Because in this new system that they're bringing you into, you won't be able to have private businesses unless you're big international corporations. It's a very old plan. Very old plan. And you're not in the club, as comedian George Carlin said. You've got to start taking back your rights then. Got to do it.